Okay, so I was deliberately looking for this one. It's a stamp of a stamp, and it's going to give us the chance to look into something very special in the world of philately. This is from Guyana in South America, and was worth 25 Guyanese dollar cents. Here it is, the world's rarest stamp. That's because it is displaying what is also the most valuable stamp in the world, the British Guiana 1 cent Magenta, which we will talk more about in a bit. This is a fairly large stamp and was issued back in 1967. Let's first talk about the country of Guyana, which, as the stamp has already pointed out, is in South America. Now, even though it is in South America, the Guyanese people associate themselves as Caribbean, even though it's pretty far from the nearest Caribbean country and from the Caribbean Sea. And that's because it was part of the British West Indies as a colony known as British Guiana. Now, I found some stamps issued by British Guiana in 1954, and you can see Queen Elizabeth II's portrait on it. You can also see an overprint stating Guyana Independence 1966. So Guyana becomes independent that year, and we're just using these stamps temporarily because one of the first stamps that they print in 1967 is the stamp that I pulled from the box, bragging about the fact that the world's rarest stamp was issued from that country. There is also a 5-cent version of the stamp that I have here as well. You will easily find great and colorful stamps from Guyana, such as the ones that I have over here, as well as stamps from British Guiana, such as the ones that I showed you earlier. But there's one stamp that you will probably never have, and that is the 1 cent Magenta. That is because there is only one known to be in existence. But if you do come across one, we should probably become friends. Do you remember when we were talking about the blue Mauritius last season and how it sold for $1.6 million? Well, hold your hats, folks, because this stamp, the 1 cent Magenta, sold for $9.5 million back in 2014. That's the highest price ever associated with a stamp, and is also therefore the most expensive item in the world by weight. Wow! Now, the stamp itself was issued back in 1856, and only a small batch was printed. That's because the country was expecting a shipment of stamps that had not yet arrived, so the postmaster instructed for these stamps to be printed. Now, this picture is actually a very clear image of what the 1 cent Magenta looks like. And you can see that it's black ink on magenta paper. The 4 corners are clipped, making it an octagonal shape, and in the center is a 3-mast sailing ship. There's also the Latin term damus appetimus que vicisium. Excuse my Latin pronunciation, but that was their motto: we give and expect in return. Now, there were some other varieties, a 4 cent Magenta and a 4 cent blue, but this is the only surviving 1 cent Magenta that is known to exist. Also, the postmaster instructed all the postal clerks to sign the stamps. This is to prevent fraud, and that's that signature right there. It was originally found by a Scottish boy living in South America back in 1873. He sold it for a few shillings, and it has since then been in the hands of some very famous collectors. Right now it's currently owned by Stuart Weitzman, the famous shoe designer, but before him was John DuPont, who committed murder and died in prison. Another famous personality was Arthur Hind, whom it is believed actually found a second 1 cent Magenta. He bought it from a gentleman for a large sum of money, and in one move lit his cigar and the stamp with the same match. All this so that he can still own the only 1 cent Magenta. That's unbelievable. Now, if you want to read further about the stamp and the several personalities that owned it, you got to check out this book. It's the 1 cent Magenta by James Barron. It takes a fascinating look at the full life story of this expensive piece of paper. Now, the stamp is on display at the moment. It's actually in a place that we've already been to, but I think it's worth the trip. Okay, so I'm back at Washington DC for a second time this season, only except this time I'm not here to find a monument, but I'm here to find the National Postal Museum, which is where the 1 cent Magenta is currently being displayed. In the 160 plus years history of the stamp, this is the most publicly accessible and longest exhibition of the 1 cent Magenta ever. So let's go check out the museum and the stamp. Yeah, so it is difficult to see the stamp clearly in that dark display box through all that glass, but it is still really cool to know that you were inches away from $9.5 million and a stamp with a fascinating history. The Postal Museum was great, and I recommend it if you get the chance to go. Thanks for watching, everyone. See you next time.